Obviously, both sides, are preparing for the possibility that they would be president. So their transition teams are putting together lists of possible cabinet picks. And Secretary of State, obviously a very important post for any president to name right away. And so we understand that Joe Biden has been on a long list of many candidates that are being positioned for possible Secretary of State. That list has not been presented to Secretary Clinton, but sources close to the campaign and the transition say that Joe Biden is among the names on those lists. Politico reported that he was on a short list. Our understanding is the list is a little bit longer than that. A lot of candidates out there, from Joe Biden to some of the former top senior State Department officials here that could be considered, even possibly John Kerry staying around for a while. And so I don't necessarily know that Joe Biden would be the obvious pick for Secretary Clinton. He obviously has a lot of star power. But Secretary Clinton has a lot of star power in her own right as former Secretary of State. And also, I think they have disagreed on many avenues of foreign policy in the past, such as Iraq, such as Afghanistan, the conflict in Syria. Secretary Clinton has proposed a little bit of a more robust military presence. So not necessarily sure he's the most natural pick, but certainly on a list of possible candidates, Carol.
When you hear this, you've known Donald Trump for 45 years. You've been in a lot of situations with him, meetings, right? You see, do you overall believe his accusers?
I very much do. I just think it's preposterous that he's claiming he's done nothing like that. I mean, he's been that way always. I've never been in a room with him alone except on one occasion. Shall I tell you that occasion?
Yeah, tell me.
I don't want to sound like a gossiper, but I was pregnant with my first child at the time, and so was his second wife. And he compared my breast size to his wife by putting his hands in the air, like talking about large. I was in a business meeting. I was like shocked. And so that, of course, is nothing compared to anything that we've been hearing in the press, and I found it rather comical. But I did think afterwards, how would I have felt if I had been a young woman, not a successful businesswoman, and been in a situation like that? I would have felt very compromised. So if a man is that way, it's so inappropriate. I just assume it's that way all the time.
Welcome back. Less than 2 weeks into the election, and WikiLeaks keeps painting a revealing picture of Hillary Clinton and her possible foreign policy agenda and her foreign policy positions. But does it all add up to a Clinton doctrine? And what would that look like? And what does it say about her role as a possible world leader? Let's take a look at some of her policy positions with one of the best in the business, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's a professor of strategy and irregular warfare at the Institute of World Politics and wrote a great book called Defeating Jihad. Dr. Gorka, first stop, let's talk about Iran. What do you think, what is her stance on the Iranian deal? She laid the groundwork for it, correct?
Right. Absolutely. As Secretary of State, she prepared the groundwork for the deal, which basically provides Iran $150 billion and puts them on the cusp of nuclear capability.
Since that time, the Houthi rebels supported by the Iranians are shooting at us. They're harassing our ships and refusing to actually sign the agreement. So let's take a look at one of the excerpts that's been revealed from the WikiLeaks drops. Well, she says this, well, you up the pain that they have to endure by not in any way occupying or invading them, but by bombing their facilities. I mean, that is the option. It is not, as we like to say, boots on the ground. And the comeback was, has it ever worked in the history of warfare? Clinton, no. That was 2013. She was talking to the Wall Street Journal. What do you get from that?
I get again and again and again what WikiLeaks has showed us. There is a Hillary Clinton in the public eye will say one thing, and then behind closed doors to her biggest donors, to the bankers, she'll say exactly the opposite. She'll lay the groundwork for an Iran deal and then talk about bombing them.
When you see the foreign donors that have given to the Clinton Foundation, supposedly different, obviously they've been intermingled, and some are really disturbed by it. Here's an example of where we could be getting in terms of a Clinton doctrine. Foreign government donors, quote, all the money is in John Podesta's email, February 26, 2015. What do you get from that?
I get one thing, Brian. If she becomes president, America is on the auction block. The highest bidder wins. It's not about national security. It's about whoever gets to her and who she thinks will give her more power and more money.
What do you think? What's her dancing with David Petraeus about? What's behind that?
Look, this is the classic political operative. This is somebody who will use people and then potentially just throw them away when they have no more utility.
Whether it's Clinton or Trump, they're going to have to deal with Mosul and
Yes.
what's left of Iraq. So let's go right now to how this war is progressing. This is a live camera, and I'm looking at Mosul, and I see the tough resistance we're getting, and we're eventually going to prevail, helping the Iraqi army do it. Well, my question, Dr. Gorka, is what's the end game? What happens when ISIS is pushed out?
Right.
Do we know, does Iran control the Shia-led government? Are the Turks going to declare war on Iraq? That's what we hear. They're upset. Do the Kurds have a role? What happens?
So we discussed this in the break. This is the big so what question. Even if this this is an incredibly heterogeneous group. We have Sunni Iraqis, we have Shia militia, we have the Kurds. If they can agree long enough to take Mosul, so what? What are you going to do next? You're squeezing a balloon. You're not going to kill all the jihadis. They're just going to move somewhere else.
But you know what the president's going to say? Hey, I'm leaving, and I took back Ramadi, I took back Mosul, and I took back Fallujah. Good night, everybody, but we're going to be left holding the bag. Dr. Gorka, thanks so much.
I feel good when I see you.
Don King and Donald Trump, the Dons, on top of the boxing world.
Here he is now, my man.
The fellow showman had a heavyweight star in Mike Tyson. In 1988, Tyson's knockout of Michael Spinks in just 91 seconds made more money than any other boxing event at the time.
Gate of $12.3 million is the largest live gate in the history of sport, not only fighting.
Trump, King, Tyson, and Atlantic City in the 1980s were on a roll.
Trump is the missing ingredient in the fight between who's going to have the biggest and the best events, Atlantic City or Vegas in boxing.
The good times didn't last. In 1991, Mike Tyson was arrested for the rape of an 18-year-old. On February 10th, 1992, an Indiana jury convicted him.
Mr. Trump will be making a statement.
3 days after his conviction, before his sentencing, Donald Trump held a press conference proposing a deal that Tyson do no jail time.
As you know, I'm a very strong believer in harsh punishment, including the death penalty. But we think it's probably, in this particular case, a lot more good can be done by having Mike Tyson pay a substantial award, both to the victim, subject to court approval, and creating an award for people that were abused or raped in the state of Indiana.
8 days after that, on NBC, Trump blamed the victim.
It's my opinion that to a large extent Mike Tyson was railroaded in this case. You have a young woman that was in his room, his hotel room, late in the evening at her own will. You have a young woman who was seen dancing for the beauty contest, dancing with a big smile on her face, looked happy as could be.
Trump's efforts didn't keep his heavyweight moneymaker out of prison. 2 months later, Tyson was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He served 3.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Mike Tyson was an investment worth protecting. By 1990, 2 of Trump's Atlantic City casinos were on a losing streak. Trump looking to change the odds. In November 1990, Trump outbid Las Vegas's Caesars Palace for an unheard of $11 million to host Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman. Boxing legend Bob Arum promoted George Foreman. Kathy Duva's husband, Dan, now deceased, and their main events promoted the reigning champ, Evander Holyfield.
This was huge.
Big as it gets. The battle of the ages.
Concerned that Trump bid too much, and with headline news that 2 of his casinos were struggling, promoters had a rare lockbox clause written into the contract ensuring money from the fight couldn't be used to support Trump's failing properties.
It was Trump throwing out these crazy numbers. And the people working for Trump telling him, Donald, we can't afford this in Atlantic City.
Just days after the contract was signed, Trump found a way to save money and keep the fight. On January 17, 1991, the U.S. began bombarding Iraq during the First Gulf War. Days later, Trump informed both Duva and Arum he was invoking the Act of War clause in the contract, and they would have to settle for less.
So this is a threat to your business?
This was unprecedented, especially for this was Donald Trump. My God, who wouldn't trust him?
With 7 weeks to the fight, Arum proposed they take it back to Las Vegas. Then he says Donald Trump really shocked him.
Trump said, if you did that, I'm going to sue you. I said, what are you talking about? You say that the contract is terminated. We'll go to Las Vegas, as hard as that is, and do the fight, and you're going to sue us?
With the fight looming and the prospect of a long legal battle, Arum and Duva says Trump had them over a barrel, leaving them little choice but to agree to his terms. It's a deal that still stings today.
If your claim to fame is that you've taken money from other people and not delivered what you promised, that doesn't make you a genius businessman, that makes you a thief.
Bob Arum says he never did a deal directly with Trump again. CNN sent multiple requests for comment from Donald Trump about the victim-blaming and business deal allegations. His campaign has not responded. Inducted into the New Jersey Boxing Hall of Fame, Trump was credited with turning the town by the sea into the Mecca of boxing. Still, Donald Trump never hosted another major title fight at any of his properties after invoking the Act of War clause in the contract for the Holyfield-Foreman fight. Both Mike Tyson and Don King have endorsed Donald Trump for president. Miguel Marquez, CNN, New York.